Alright, welcome back to another AAAISAT video, which stands for an alternative adventure in space and time. I'm your host, Optical Spectra. Today I'm doing season 30 of Doctor Who. Wow, that was the quickest intro I've done, I think. 1993 was a big year for Doctor Who, as it was its 30th anniversary. The season features a new later recurring time lady, who isn't named after a weird music video, or a Modern Warfare sniping montage on YouTube. Anyways, enough of that. This season also introduces one of the most iconic companions of all time, Benny Summerfield. It's the end of the Dalek Civil War, and we get a big anniversary story featuring the Rani and Doctors 3 to 8. This is the last season to be produced by the BBC until 2000. By the 90s, the BBC would start to have their shows produced by other companies. Doctor Who would now be produced by Real Time Star from 1994 and continue to until 2000. Like I mentioned last time, the 8th Doctor has even more facial hair than in the last season. Now he has a full beard, and that's how it stays until the end of his era. Lisa Bowman, who previously played Kara on Survivor, would be playing the new companion Benny Summerfield. She'll be a second companion for episodes 3 and 4 before becoming to be the main one in episodes 5 and 6, as Julius Wahala leaves at the end of episode 4. This would also be Aronovich's last season. A script editor decided to give someone else a go. And the last thing before we actually start reviewing the episodes is that we get a fresh title sequence for Grippers. It's much darker, looks better, has a much better looking logo, and has a much more appropriate theme tune done by Mark Ayres, containing elements from the Delia, Derbyshire and Peter Howell themes. First off, we have Election Day, written by future script editor Russell T Davies, or just Russell Davies as he was back then. The story is set on Gallifrey and introduces the new Time Lord lady villain, Colleen, played by Joanna Lumley. It's Election Day on Gallifrey, and both Romana and Colleen are the only remaining candidates for president. It's never explained what actually happened to Flavia. I just presume she fucked off after the events of Lungbarrow and retired on a rocky moon. Anyways, Leela, who is now Romana's assistant, suspects Colleen of rigging the election, so she calls in the Doctor to investigate. Problem is, the Doctor couldn't really give a fuck about politics and elections and all that, and who decides what does what. But he ends up investigating as it's Romana, one of his friends. Parts 1 and 2 are pretty boring. It's just questioning the public about who they voted for, and investigating Colleen and all that. However, there is a good side plot as well involving Colleen's unnamed assistant, played by later Doctor Who actor Peter Capaldi, killing the people who were heavily involved in helping Romana win the election. He ends up being arrested towards the end of part 2. Anyways, at one point Rain follows Colleen down to the lower part of the city, where she discovers the TARDIS Colleen lives in. She calls the Doctor and Leela down to investigate and discover that Colleen had been cheated in the system, so that she would win, and they also find out that if she does win, she'll be trying to start a war with the galaxy and will change the laws of interfering with time. In part 3 we have the Doctor, Rain and Leela exposing Colleen's plant. Her unnamed assistant escapes from the arrest and sets a bomb in the Citadel. However, the Doctor is able to deactivate the bomb and defeat Colleen. She is exiled to a rocky planet and her guard is killed. And with Romana being the only candidate left, she ends up becoming Lady President. While this is a decent Gallifrey story for its time, I find most of it boring, to be honest. Parts 1 and 2 are just a murder mystery and an investigation story, and I think it's only in part 3 where the action begins and things actually get interesting. Most of the guest cast in this are alright, but not the best. Joanna Lumley's acting as Colleen Doe is probably the highlight, as she does a great performance, and it's no wonder they brought her back later on. One of the most notable things about this story is we get the famous quote from 8 about him not condoning violence. And while it's a good quote, I wish it wasn't his most iconic. I think that should go to his Nothing Lasts Forever bit from the end of Network. and Russell Davies does a first good attempt on Doctor Who. It's his first Gallifrey story, and it definitely isn't his last. So with that, my score for Election Day will have to be a 5 out of 10. Next we have Transit by Ben Ivanovich. Anyway, so the story opens with Kadiatu Lethbridge Stewart joining a crowd watching the grand opening of a new line in the Solar Transit system that will transport people to a different solar system. But when the demonstration starts, there's a flash of white light and an explosion, and all the passengers turn into blue goo. Kadiatu decides to help investigate what went wrong. However, when they send a second train down the tunnel, the TARDIS chooses the worst possible place to land and collides with the train, sending the TARDIS into a wall where it gets stuck and the main goes flying. The Doctor gets out, and after being questioned and learning on what's happening, he decides to help everyone out while trying to find Rain. He and Kadiatu team up, and we learn that Kadiatu is a descendant of the Brigadier, as during his younger days he was stationed in Kenya and had a one-night stand. Unknowing to him, started a separate line of Lethbridge stewards. Anyways, back to the main story. The two go from planet to planet, learning that a mysterious entity has attacked the stations there, and that Katiidu is after a man named Blondie who took advantage of her and stole all her money. During their visit to Mars, they discovered that the Solar Transit system is engineered from the same technology that was used in the Seeds of Death, and it's revealed that there was a 1,000-day war between humans and Ice Warriors. The later lost, and now the humans used their iconography in a disrespectful manner, using an image of an attractive woman dressed as an Ice Warrior. Meanwhile, Rain is stuck on Pluto and teams up with some women to help lead right and cause chaos in order to bring down some crime syndicates. The Doctor and Kadiatu eventually reach Pluto, and they find that Rain's being possessed. The Doctor gets inside the Solar Transit system, the line he was attempting to go to, and meets an evil entity who wishes to break free into the universe, who the Doctor nicknames Fred. He is able to stop Fred and free Rain and the TARDIS. Before Howell leaving, however, he meets a computer named Florence and gets it to erase all records of his presence on Earth, as they feel he has become too big. Yeah, Transit is alright in my opinion. Some people say the story drags on a bit too long. I think it's fine the length it is. And some people hate how there's a whole new line of Lethbridge Stewart. Yes, it is a bit weird and it doesn't feel like the Brig we know, but this was before the Brig we know, so oh well, I mean, it's happened, we can live with it. And the plot is fine, everything about it's fine, but the problem is it's come out a bit too late. From what I can tell, the story was planned as early as season 24, and it's just a McCulloch story, but coming out later. I'm not a big fan of the whole cyberpunk theme the story has, as I think cyberpunk died out a year too earlier, and it doesn't suit Griffiths' Doctor at all. Like it worked with a season 24 and 25 7th Doctor. It just is a 7th Doctor story with Griffiths. So Transit gets a 5 out of 10. Next up we have Love and War, a great story written by Paul Cornell. It's the start of Bernice Summerfield and the end of Rain Cunningham. The Doctor and Rain are attending the funeral for one of Rain's friends, Julian. After the funeral, the two arrive on the planet Heaven, a colony world inhabited by both humans and Draconians, them lads from Frontier in Space. The planet is also a graveyard, helping those laid to rest, since it's really full after the Dalekium War. The Doctor says that he is here to find the book. The two befriend a group of psychic travellers, and Rain becomes very friendly with Jan, a pirate knight with fire powers, whom the Doctor really dislikes for some reason. They also befriend Bernice Summerfield, an archaeologist. The Doctor asks her to help him find the book for a mystery reason, but Rain just accepts it and goes exploring with Jan and the others. The Doctor and Benny travel to the Heavenite Observatory, where they find the book and decipher the reading. It turns out that a fungi race named the Houthi are planning on invading heaven by taking over the bodies of the dead. The Doctor is ambushed by the head of the church and is tortured, being forced to relive the death of his third incarnation. It's here revealed that, during the events of Planet of the Spiders Part 6, three were stuck in the time vortex for 5 years. The Doctor is rescued by Benny, but soon the Who-Free invasion begins. After some time together, Rain decides she wants to live with Jan and decides to get married. She tells the Doctor and he admits to being scared of losing her but accepts it. However, the Doctor has a different motive. We get to see him where he encounters Death. The two share a world while Death talks to the Doctor about how he's become unlike his previous incarnation, the chess master. He used Ace and all the other people he knew. He says that his previous incarnation was subconsciously responsible for his 6th incarnation, steering his TARDIS into the Rani's tractor beam and causing his regeneration. Jan and the Travellers go to the Who-Free sphere, but Jan ends up being killed. After escaping, the Doctor allows the Who-Free fathers to infect Jan, and since the Who-Free sphere is flammable, he tells Jan to go and ignite the sphere, which he does, destroying the Who-Free. During this, Rain deals with the undead and possessed form of Julian, and that she and Bernice find out what the Doctor has done. We then get a very emotional scene between the Doctor and Rain. Rain is refusing to travel with him ever again, but upset, angry and ashamed, the Doctor forces Rain into the TARDIS against her will and tries taking her home, with Bernice accidentally ending up in the TARDIS as well. I fucking adore this story. It's got a really dark tone to it and it's the perfect piece for 8, showing how his 7th incarnation's life is now haunting him. The design for the Who-Free is brilliant, and it's one of the best looking monsters from the old era that still stands out to this day. Griffiths and Swahala act their hearts out, especially in them final emotional scenes. And what's great about this story is that it sets up the one that's released next season, with Benny noting that her father vanished and was presumed a traitor during the Human-Dalek War, perhaps one day to find out the truth. The only real thing I dislike about this story is that it's hinted that Jan and Rain had sex. It's never mentioned or shown, thankfully it's a kid's show after all, but it's hinted that they had a bang up. But other than that, Love and War is a solid 10 out of 10 story. Next we have Blood Heat by Jim Mortimer, the final story with Rain as a companion. So at the end of Love and War, the TARDIS is attacked. Benny is flung into the vortex and the Doctor and Rain crash land on Earth. At first it appears they've landed during the dinosaur area as there are dinosaurs around. No shit. But soon the Doctor notices that there are dinosaurs from different time periods, and that's when the two discover they're in an overgrown London and the parallel universe. A parallel universe where the third Doctor is killed by Morka during the event of Doctor Who and the Silurians. In this universe, the Doctor is killed, the Silurians take over Earth, and humankind is going extinct. There are now but a few pockets of humankind on Earth, and the ones we mainly focus on in this story are the surviving unit family from the John Pertwee era. We have the Brigadier, Liz Shaw, Benton and Joe Grant, but in completely different characters. Brigadier is a husk of a man he once was, who knows the location of a few missiles and wants to try a war with the Silurians. Liz Shaw is now a beaten down widow trying to find a sense of purpose in this new world she lives in. Benton is now a hardened soldier who will do anything for the cause. And Joe? Joe gets it worse in this story. Joe is a brain dead, feral, pregnant being who can barely speak and has lost most of her sanity. Meanwhile, Benny is trying to make her way back to the Doctor with a group of people who aren't really memorable, and during her time trying to find him, she becomes infected with a Silurian disease and could eventually die from it. Anyways, the humans want to destroy the Silurians in the war. Meanwhile, Morka has become older and now regrets his past and just wants peace, but the other Silurians want to wipe out the humans in the war too. The Doctor and Rain trying to make peace between the two sides, while trying to rebuild their friendship after the events of the last story, and finding a way out of the universe, as currently the Doctor's TARDIS is sinking in the tar pit. The two were able to make peace with the two races, and Benny is eventually cured once they find the Doctor. But the Doctor learns that this universe is destroying theirs, so they must escape and use it. He uses his parallel third incarnation's TARDIS to quote-unquote tow his TARDIS out of the tar and escape in his TARDIS. He destroys the universe, but Rain is furious and disgusted with him, as he has killed real people who had real lives. The Doctor tries to explain his actions, but it's no use. Rain confirms that she definitely wants to go home now, and the story ends with the Doctor returning her to Sam at his mansion. Bernice also agrees to continue travelling with the Doctor, so long he vows no longer to meddle with anyone's life again, including hers. Yeah, this is probably the weak link of the season. I don't think it's an overly bad story. It's alright as they go, and it's probably the best Silurian one to date, or since Doctor and the Silurians. But this one has some flaws to it. I find the pacing in this one very slow. Like, I get bored with the story about halfway through. And I also think the characters in this one are a bit naff. Like, anyone who isn't from Doctor Who and the Silurians is not rememberable at all, remotely interesting. Since the story, Kate Manning has said that she hates a character in this story as it makes her look awful. Who can blame her? What they did to Joe Grant in the story was unacceptable. Rain's final ending is decent, I guess, but I think it would have been much better if she left in Love and War, as I felt this story really is. Blood Heat is very much a one companion story, but they threw Bernice in at last minute, so she gets a pretty crap plot for this one. So I think if Rain left in Love and War, I'd like this story more maybe. So I'm going to have to give it a 4 out of 10. Next we have Hostility of the Daleks by Ian Briggs, the final story in the Dalek Civil War arc. While touring Rome, the Doctor and Benny discover an army of guards trying to fight off a Dalek. The Doctor helps kill it and realises that the Dalek Civil War has been brought to Earth again. He discovers that an unused weapon from Scarrow during its war, named the Matter Destroyer, has mysteriously arrived on Earth. The weapon is able to wipe out any race just by sampling one's DNA, and instead of trying to wipe out a planet or a race, Renegades and Imperials are trying to capture the weapon to wipe out the other side. With the help of a few Roman guards and an old familiar doctor named Julius, who is also from Gallifrey, the Doctor and Benny try capturing the Matter Destroyer and taking it into his son to dispose of it. Unfortunately, the Imperial fleet capture it first and they begin to escape. Through communication, the Doctor learns that Davros was once again back. We learn that after the events of Last of the Daleks, Davros was rescued by an Imperial fleet, and that Davros had actually been holding on to the Matter Destroyer since the events of Remembrance of the Daleks, as he took it on board his escape pod when the Hand of Omega was about to destroy the mother ship. But anyways, after the events of Last, Davros is rescued by an Imperial ship, and soon after that, a group of renegades discover the ship and they begin attacking it, resulting in part of the wall being blown off and the Matter Destroyer being lost in the vortex. But the Imperials and the renegades have tracked it down to Earth. The Imperial dogs use it to wipe out the renegades, and they win the Civil War. And then Davros turns his interest into destroying the Earth, but is stopped by Julius, as he uses his old battle TARDIS to explode on board Davros' ship, causing Julius, Davros, and the Imperial Daleks to be wiped out. This is a decent-ish Dalek story. It's good to finally have an end to the Dalek Civil War after, I guess, 5 or 7 years, depends if you count Revelation, and the end of Davros for a good few years. However, this story has a major issue with fans, and I can sort of understand why. And the problem is this story feels too much like Remembrance of the Daleks. I mean, even some scenes feel too familiar, like the first Dalek reveal and the communications between the Doctor and Davros. I also don't understand who Julius is. Like, it's revealed that, yeah, he went to the academy with the Doctor, but he's never really explained. We don't get why he's on there, what he's doing. Was he exiled? Is he on holiday? Is he a soldier running away? We don't know. We're just expected to know him and get to like him instantly, but he's not even really likeable. Also, this is a debut for Nicholas Briggs voicing the Daleks. His voice work in this one's a bit rusty compared to his later work, but nonetheless it's still a good job. So yeah, I guess I'd have to give this one a 6 out of 10. And finally we have the 30th anniversary special, The Eight Doctors by Ben Aronovich. Ronnie wants to rule the universe to itself, however she can't do this while the Doctor's around and monitoring the universe all the time. So she decides to have all of his 8 incarnations distracted for the time being. She traps his first 2 incarnations in a time lock. The 8th Doctor learns of what's going on and goes to rescue them, but he falls for the Ronnie's bait and is now caught in a trap. Then every incarnation between the 3rd and the 8th has swapped locations with one another, and now none of their TARDISes work. They must deal with their confused companion to whatever situation the other incarnation was in, and find out what happened and who caused the switch. And only 4 knows that the Ronnie's behind everything as he swapped locations with 8. A brief summary of what each Doctor does in this one. The 3rd Doctor is now preventing a second Cyberman invasion with Mel Bush. Essentially, it's a sequel to The Invasion. 4 is caught in a time lock himself and is now helping Benny navigate the Ronnie's TARDIS to turn on the communication panel to help the other Doctors, while being haunted by the Ronnie's unnamed assistant and strange wolf creatures similar to Fifi in the Happiness Patrol. 5 is dealing with the suicidal Sontaran who is planning to destroy the Earth in a nuclear explosion alongside Liz Shaw. 6 has to finish off creating a half-made antidote to stop a plague that's covering everyone on Earth with plastic. Essentially, it's an auton invasion alongside Leela. 7 is in conflict with the Master and stopping him from releasing a deadly disease in 1665, which will later go on to be known as the Great Plague with Nyssa. And 8 is dealing with the Dalek invasion in the Egyptian times alongside Ace. Eventually, Benny is able to communicate with all the Doctors and exposes the Ronnie's plans. And with the help of the 4th Doctor, she is able to reactivate all the TARDISes and send everyone back to their proper times and proper places, and send the Ronnie's TARDIS slowly drifting to the time lock this 1st and 2nd incarnation were in, with no power left in their TARDIS. Like the 3 Doctors and the 5 Doctors, this is considered an all-time classic story. I personally say it's the best out of the 3, because it's got more old stuff, but second best, as it isn't as strong as the 5 Doctors when it comes to plot. Also, unlike the 3 Doctors and the 5 Doctors, the story doesn't have anything set on Gallifrey or add anything to Gallifrey, which can upset some people, but in some ways I think that makes the story more unique and interesting. And this time the companion, and by companion I mean Benny, the companion actually feels more important to the story as well. So I'm going to have to give the story a 9 out of 10. Give it a 10 out of 10, but that'd feel wrong to me. I feel like this is a great story, but I don't think it's perfect. All in all, after the anniversary seasons, I'd say this is probably the best, with season 10 being 2nd and 20 being 3rd. This is probably Griffiths' best season, and it's where he probably plays the character as his own, instead of being a continuation of McCoy's Doctor. And it's in this season where I think the show became a bit more confident and strong than it had been during the later JNT years. It was slowly starting to gain the public's respect once again. So my overall score for season 30 would have to be a 9 out of 10. So that's it for season 30. In the next review I'll be covering the introduction of a second companion, the first season not to be produced by the BBC, and the first Christmas special since 1965.